How's it going? And welcome to episode 254 of On the Wire, proud member of the Pitcher List Podcast Network. I am Adam Howe, joined as always by Kevin Hastings. Thank you all for listening and or watching. Good, great show for you as we prepare for the 9th overall FAAB run of the 2026 season, Kevin. And man, no more banter. I'm going right into it, Kevin. Welcome. Good to see you again. But we have so much to talk about, unfortunately.
Oh yeah, big news week. So yeah, that pretty much. Adam, I enjoy weeks like this. We're gonna go through the news. That pretty much takes care of the episode. But we'll hopefully have some actionable tips along the way to help this news, help use the news to our advantage when oftentimes initially it is not.
So. Right. And what's even crazier is that as long as this list is that we're going to talk about, it's actually longer because I keep stuff out that
exactly
I don't care about so more. It's not going to impact my FAAB considerations enough for me to, bring it up. All right. So not most of this is in chronological order, but some of it isn't. So we'll start at the beginning of the week because I want to see what you saw out of the Atlanta lineup now that they have Ha-Seong Kim back starting at shortstop. He made his debut early in the week, or his 2026 debut early in the week when Eli White went on the 7-day concussion IL. So he should be able to come back, assuming everything looks pretty good for the start of next week. But in the meantime, unless Kim goes back on the IL himself, it's not as though Eli White is going to come back to the roster and then kick Kim out. So how is this impacting the Atlanta lineup in general? I know, we had a lot of Marcio Dubon has been doing great in general throughout the first basically 2 months of the season, but he's been playing in the outfield so much, so he's not really being displaced by Kim per se. Any other observations?
Yeah, it's been pretty interesting. They did recall Jose Azocar, Atlanta, when Eli White went on the IL, and versus lefties, it does appear Azocar is filling in for Eli White, and he typically sat against righties, and we saw Mike Yastrzemski. So that's what we're seeing there. Sandy Leon has been catching versus lefties, and that's really the only two, Azocar and Leon, in for Dom Smith then, who hits the bench, and we allow Drake Baldwin to take swings from behind the plate, and then Yastrzemski in for Azocar. Atlanta's lineup has been very stable, those being the only two changes, depending on handedness of the pitcher, over the entire week since these moves were made last weekend. So Atlanta actually one of the more stable lineups in Major League Baseball right now, with just the two changes and the same exact two changes versus handedness of pitcher. So it's pretty set right now in Atlanta. Ha-Seong Kim's going to play every day at shortstop.
Yeah, and it's at the chagrin of Jorge Mateo, who had been doing pretty good for himself, pretty much starting every day at shortstop for at least the 2 weeks prior to Kim coming back. No surprise there. You did mention that Sandy Leon had been catching half the games since being signed to a major league contract. And that was because the Braves also lost Sean Murphy to the IL with the fractured middle finger. Presumably, Sandy is, the backup catcher, obviously, to Baldwin, but Baldwin, as you mentioned, has been pretty much DHing all the time. So, any interest in Sandy, at least as a C2, if you are in a pinch, because it looks like he's gonna get enough run behind the plate and get in the lineup somewhat regularly.
No, because it does appear to me it's only been 5 games. We have 3 games that they started versus left-handed starting pitching, 2 versus righties. It appears Leon has been in these games versus the lefties, so that then Drake Baldwin is the designated hitter,
Mhm.
and Dom Smith takes a seat. But Atlanta does have a 7-game week this week, only 2 lefties on the schedule.
Fair.
So that's not enough for me for Leon.
Fair enough. Good to see. Obviously, good to be paying attention. And as I'm looking at this lineup, man, Atlanta's faced a lot of lefties in
Yes.
the last like 3 weeks, which is just interesting to see. But yeah, just because you see somebody starting 3 out of 5 doesn't mean look for the pattern. Is really what
Yeah.
where I'm getting at. So
And when
things
there's a
set up.
weird day, don't just look at that handedness, look at who that starting pitcher was and was it an opener?
There you
If it
go.
looks weird, it probably was an opener.
With the expectation of that follower
Yep.
coming in and being the lefty or the righty. Going to the Athletics, they will be with this is one of those rare circumstances, right, where we got some news about a hitter like on Sunday and then officially made the move on Monday to move him to the IL so we could actually pull him from our lineups with confidence. And at least I was able to do this with Jacob Wilson at the beginning of the week. I was very grateful for the Athletics to do that instead of kind of just stringing us along. Jacob Wilson does hit the IL with the left shoulder subluxation. What's the shortstop situation looking like for the Athletics with their starter down for the count?
They've just slid Daryl Hernandez in there on a daily basis since Wilson went to the IL. And he's not horrible, but doesn't really help us in any category. Doesn't hurt you anywhere. In deep leagues, Hernandez is an option as a middle infielder. Hopefully gets a couple runs and RBIs through the week because his batting average is decent and it's projected to be around 260 the rest of the way. So any counting stats he does give us are very valuable when his batting average isn't hurting us. There's just not much there. He's got 1 home run, 2 stolen bases on the season. He does have 74 plate appearances, just the 7 runs, 5 RBI, but he's going to get the run every day for a while. So those counting stats are absolutely better than zeros, especially with that batting average in a deep league.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with the absence of Wilson, it does move the likes of like Zach Geloff up a spot. Wilson was leading off every now and again, so obviously Nick Kurtz can just hold on to that role. Not that that's a big surprise there, but Geloff been performing admirably. And the thought is that and pretty much playing every single day at third base for the Athletics. When he was mixing and matching between center field, third base, filling in at second base every once in a while. But with Max Muncy, the Athletics version of Max Muncy, expected back at some time, do you think that Geloff has done enough to warrant either holding Muncy off or just continuing to play every day? Or do you expect to see Geloff go back into a, sit against a couple righties here or there, but play against all the lefties?
Yeah, it's interesting. Can the question for me would be, can one of them play shortstop? Because would you rather have both of them in the lineup than Daryl Hernandez?
Right.
And I think that is a strong possibility because, as you mentioned, Geloff's been performing quite well. And, we still might have a little post type sleeper type thing going on. And Max Muncy, same, was performing like we'd been hoping
Right.
we would see him perform over the last couple of seasons, finally early this season. So it would be interesting to see. I doubt that would happen. I think Hernandez is probably a better defender at shortstop than either, but it's something to keep in mind and keep an eye on.
Yeah, you got to think that they made that move. They put Hernandez in at shortstop every day with Wilson making the position available when Geloff could have just moved into that position
Right.
as well. So, yeah, we'll have to wait and see. And, there's always a chance that Geloff just, peters out by the time Muncy comes back as well. So ride that while you can if you haven't already. Galef is still available in a handful of leagues as well, even 15 teamers. All right. Well, the Athletics also made a big move, and I'm going to pair this with the Mets, who also made a move, making a MLB debut for us to consider in this FAAB period. The Athletics call up Henry Bolt, playing pretty much every day in center field since his call up for the Athletics. And then, like the Athletics, the Mets also call up a center fielder, AJ Ewing. They both make their debut midweek, or mid to early of this past week. Which one of them are you expecting to stay longer?
Ooh, that's a great question.
I'll preface that by getting ahead of it with the news that there was news that Luis Robert Jr. is not progressing very well on his rehab stint while he sits in the IL. And that was, I don't know if that wasn't the exact reason why AJ Ewing was called up, but it could give Ewing a little bit more runway, right, to make a name for himself at the major league level, where Bolt was basically, he took the place of Jacob Wilson's roster spot. So it's not a positional 1-for-1 spot.
Well, and the position 1-for-1 that would put Bolt's spot in the lineup in jeopardy would be Denzel Clark coming back, who does begin a rehab assignment this weekend. Now, we don't see Denzel Clark out there every day, but that would take some playing time away. And beginning a rehab start as we are recording on Saturday evening. He's beginning his rehab tonight. So, Denzel Clark, I don't think if Henry Bolt is performing at the plate, it's going to take his position. We know how electrifying Clark can be with the spectacular play in the outfield. But yeah, it's close. I think I would probably go with, especially with that Luis Robert news, I think AJ Ewing is probably the safer play to get more consistent playing time when guys begin to return. It very well could be both, but I think I'd be more confident in Ewing right now.
Yeah, I mean, when Clark was playing, he was pretty much
not every other day.
Yeah, Clark was pretty much playing every day until, right before going on the IL, he missed a couple of games, and you have to wonder whether or not that was.
It looks a lot like Robert's line, where he was playing every day and then started missing a couple days here and there right before the IL stint. So,
yeah, with the
I think both of them can play their way into keeping their spot.
So the other question is, should we be comparing what we bid on Bolt or Ewing to what we saw Ryan Walter-Smith get in Arizona across leagues? He's been playing, every single day since getting the call up late last week. And obviously he was picked up pretty much everywhere due to that news. Do you throw him in this mix, and does he become the one that's you're like, you wish you had grabbed him because you don't want to take the risk on Bolt or Ewing? Or do you think one of these guys would be a safer bet? Because it sure would appear Waldschmidt is playing every day. He's played against both lefties that they started. They played against 5 other righties as well, starting in center field, granted in the 9 spot. But if we were thinking that this was going to be a Alec Thomas replacement as far as playing time, we were wrong. Waldschmidt seems to be getting, everyday run.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking this more of not what I think they're worth, but what I think they will go for.
Sure.
AJ Ewing's going to cost a lot more than Bolt. 3 to 4 times as much, probably. Which makes it kind of difficult, maybe if you want to conserve FAAB money and you want to have your bid in on AJ Ewing, but you're happy with Bolt, you lower that bid on AJ Ewing to about the same of what you think it's going to take to get Bolt in your league, and maybe you get lucky. But I don't think I'm gonna bid much more than that on AJ Ewing when I would be fine with landing Bolt on the teams where I need an outfielder right now.
Yeah, it's interesting just because they're coming up at the same time,
Yeah,
and Waldschmidt didn't really have a competitor, or a one for one
right.
competitor, and so having both these guys up, in theory, should keep the bidding lower. Plus, we're also a week further in, and
And I
there's
don't think
money.
Ewing will go for the amounts that Waldschmidt did. However, uh, with Ewing, we have the New York tax, we have the hype
Sure.
tax. I think there are casual baseball fans out there that know a little bit about some of the minor leagues that have heard of AJ Ewing, and not many have heard of Bolt. So
Mhm.
I think there's several reasons, and maybe not any of them having to do with projected performance, that AJ Ewing's going to cost more than Bolt this
Hmm.
week.
Fair. All fair points. Well, speaking of the New York Mets tax, they are being taxed on the health side of things.
Yes.
Francisco Alvarez is going to be out probably for about at least 2 months or so after having surgery to repair a meniscus tear, on it, obviously on his knee. And then they also just found out that they'll be without Clay Holmes. He hits the IL with a fractured fibula, and he will be gone for a quite a long time. No exact timetable, but let's just assume it'll be, through the most of the year, if not the entirety of the 2026 regular season. Um, which one of these has the bigger impact? I mean, they're very different impacts, and it's just it's LOL Mets at this point, right? It's just how many the hits just keep on coming for the Mets. But what impact the having these two guys being missing off their active roster are you expecting?
Well, it's intriguing on the pitching side. A couple weeks ago, David Peterson was losing his spot unless they go 6 man. Now, even with a 5 man and David Peterson in the rotation, they don't have a fifth starter. There is some speculation that we may see Zach Thornton this week. He will obviously not be available in NFBC leagues if that is the case. Highly doubt he was drafted in many, if any, places, so won't be available this week. But yeah, if we see him get to make his debut, um, I he could stick, right? So this
Mhm.
is going to be an intriguing start to watch. Holmes is going to be out a while. So so that is intriguing. And then on the hitting side, it's also intriguing to me in that Alvarez, as far as catcher, Luis Torrens was getting half or more of the starts behind the plate. Alvarez was DHing a lot. So as far as the lineup goes, it's going to be a lot of shuffling, and who gets those designated hitter at bats. We'll probably see MJ Melendez is getting a longer leash as we keep on going here. He
That's
looked like he was beginning to slow down after his hot start, and then he picked it up again, and then he had a really rough week. He went 0 for about 18 over several days, got back in the hit column on Friday, but it does appear that MJ Melendez probably going to get a little more run here for a bit in New York due to this.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we'll going back to the pitching side, we'll know more by the time you're listening to this on Sunday if somebody actually makes the call. But uh, you have to assume the first thought of Mets fans would have been like, "Well, let's bring up Jonah Tong," but he has
Yep.
looked not well
Right.
overall in AAA this year, to the tune of a 1.37 WHIP in a 5.68 ERA. As top level stats go. Um, so, I mean, obviously the name Tong comes up first because he's already made his debut. He's on the 40-man. Thornton, on the other hand, has not done either of those things. Not that they can't make some kind of drastic move, and maybe a drastic move is the right answer at this point for the Mets. So be interesting to see who actually takes the ball.
Both RotoWire and Roster Resource have Zach Thornton making a start this week.
Mhm.
So pretty good
Um,
speculation out there.
yeah, and just again, Tong doesn't seem ready per se,
Right.
or at least the numbers don't allude to that. I mentioned earlier about Alec Thomas. He did find a new home after being DFA'd by Arizona. He got traded to the Dodgers. Does he have any kind of road to playing time with his new team?
With the Dodgers, I'm never going to say no.
Sure.
But I'm also never going to be really optimistic about someone that's entering this lineup that is not, elite.
Mhm.
But can he take Alex Call's spot as a fourth outfielder? Absolutely. And in fact, that's probably what ends up happening here at some point, in my opinion. But not enough right now for any fantasy value.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. Well, we got more Dodger news to talk about, along with a ping pong of IL stints in returns and returns back to the IL. But we're gonna first take a quick break. All right. Then we got two returnees from the IL. All-star caliber players returning back at the behest of or at the at the behest of having to make demotions as well. Sticking with the Dodgers first, we got Mookie Betts returning to the Dodgers at the expense of Alex Freeland, who was demoted. Alex Freeland had been pretty much playing every day at second base for the Dodgers, and now Kim moves over to second base while Betts takes over at shortstop again. And then Milwaukee gets back Christian Yelich at the at the expense of Tyler Black being demoted. Yelich was held out of a subsequent game after being returned to Milwaukee's roster, but he is still back with the team on the active roster. Which one of them sticks around the longest? Similar question to Ewing versus Bolt, but now these are guys that have been injury concerned. Obviously, Yelich with his back. Well, actually, Betts with his back as well in some cases. Which one do you expect to make a bigger impact moving forward, and which one do you expect to see back on the IL first? And maybe Yelich already kind of gave it away.
Yeah. He's already missed 4 straight games, including Saturday as we're recording. So yeah, I think this one pretty much answered itself over the last day or two since you made the outline, Adam. Yeah, I'm worried about Yelich. Betts has been back in the lineup 5 of the 6 games since he's been back.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that was a quick and easy one. Sticking though with the Dodgers, we got Blake Snell coming back from the IL early last week, and we talked about him being an obvious start, even with the poor start or poor return. When he faces the Angels, he never got to face the Angels as they found some loose bodies in his elbow, and he's got to go have surgery to fix that issue. And he's back on the IL. My question is is there a long-term replacement? Because I mean, we've seen a couple of guys go through loose body issues. Obviously Skubal and Rodon just came back. Skubal is, coming back, at some point as well. But should we be expecting Snell to be out longer than those guys, or do you expect that to be more of a, right in the same line as the other ones?
I think with Blake Snell's track record of injuries and the fact that they brought him back earlier than we expected, and then after one start he's going right back on the IL, that's 2 possibilities. They needed him really bad for this start and knew he was going right back to the IL. It's the Dodgers.
Sure.
Or it was a problem bringing him back earlier. I think anybody else, we would just assume that it was an issue. He came back too early, he re-injured it. How long is this going to take for him to work back again? With the Dodgers, that's in the back of my mind. Did they know that he was going on the IL after the start. But in either event, I think the Dodgers have a 5-starter rotation going right now with Yamamoto, Otani, Sheehan, Robleski, and Sasaki. They may throw a bullpen day in there. That could be the Robleski start, although he is stretched out a bit and done some things. We saw a bullpen day this week with Will Klein in there to begin the game, and that is what Roster Resource has for a day this week, that the other guys will still get extra rest even with the off day Wednesday. So that they'll still be on 6 days rest if this goes. If they have one bullpen day in there, they can have the extra day and still have 5 days rest if they don't do one. So I think this is, par for the course of what we've seen with the Dodgers this season. We're probably going to get some innings out of Robleski. Will it be a start? Will he be a follower? And do we get another bullpen day in there?
Fair. And I'm just going to do some wish casting because River Ryan,
yes.
He did return from the minor league IL and made a start for AAA on Friday. Looked pretty good. But I that would have lined up with the Snell, would have been start. And I wonder if it would line up to call him up a little bit earlier than expected. I think we all expect River Ryan to make some kind of debut with the Dodgers in 2026 at some point. But with this, I am doing a little bit of wish casting that we see him maybe by the end of May rather than waiting until June. I don't get a question there, so I'm just throwing to the baseball guys. Addison Barger did another example of comeback, send him back situation. He did return. We talked about this last week with the expectation he'd return on that Saturday. He did, and as quickly as he came, he went right back to it on the IL with a right elbow inflammation. Yoendrick Penango, who was demoted to make room for Barger, comes back just a day or two later as well. Hopefully he didn't clean out his locker completely and to make that a little bit of an easier transition. But is it just back to what we expected before Barger came back now throughout the course of the week, or has Toronto been handling their lineup any differently?
No, Penango goes from being sent to the minors to right back to being the 2 spot in the lineup versus righties. And they've faced 4 of them since he came back, and he's been in that 2 hole for each of them. So, yeah. And if he's going to hit in that 2 hole versus righties, and Toronto is facing 6 out of 7 righties for the week, this is a guy that hit 15 home runs in the minor leagues last season and has 3 in 22 games this season. So moderate power, steals a handful of bases, has even stolen double digits in the lower minors. So if he's going to hit in the 2 hole in the Toronto lineup 6 out of 7 games, this is a priority add for me for this week. And he is 0% rostered.
Yeah. Easily anywhere he was rostered prior, he was the expected drop, and he was. Exactly. So he got dropped in fantasy.
Question is, how long are we holding Barger now? We know that he probably slides right into this spot. So when the Toronto has a heavy righty lineup, that's what he's getting. But he is no longer going to get those third base opportunities that he has had in years past with Okamoto heating up. Barger is strong side platoon, and I think a very, very good strong side platoon bat. But how long can we hold someone like that that's going back to the IL?
You're going back to the IL with a right elbow issue as well. Yeah. And so
this is a guy I've been holding all year that I'm considering it's time to let him go.
Yeah, this is at that point too. It's like when he does come back, does he come back at 100%? And if he's already a strong side platoon, not at 100%. Is that worth that holding onto? I'm not sure. I also don't think you'll take a whole because of this injury history. If he does come back, sooner rather than later, I don't think it'll cost you a whole lot to get him back on your roster as well. So if you need
Great
that
point.
roster spot, I'm perfectly fine with the drop this week.
That's a great point.
All right, we going over stay in the AL East, and the New York Yankees. They get back their, presumably starting shortstop, which is funny because Anthony Volpe came off the IL at the beginning of the month and then was demoted to AAA for about a week. And then he wasn't until Jose Caballero hit the IL that they determined that, okay, fine, we can have Volpe come up, and he's started just about every game since the call up. He didn't start the first game that he was back on the roster, but they were facing a lefty. I wonder if how much to consider that fact, in that was it just timing because it was his first day back on the roster, or was it because they were facing a lefty? Max Schumann was the one in the shortstop spot to fill in for Caballero on the first 2 days of him being injured. But is Volpe the starting shortstop for the New York Yankees, even after Caballero comes back? Because Caballero had been looking pretty. I mean, there's a reason why Volpe was sent to the minors after coming back from his rehab stint. Caballero just looked pretty good there.
Yeah, according to Aaron Boone, this is Caballero's job when he comes back. He already said that. So that's what I'm operating on. Of course, Volpe and someone with his pedigree could easily play his way into changing that. And it's kind of funny. He has a 103 WRC plus without having a hit, because in 11 plate appearances, he's walked 5 times, but he does not have a hit. So I don't foresee him playing well enough to make Aaron Boone change his mind.
Yeah. Caballero also, it was a finger issue. He actually pinched ran in that Monday game before hitting the IL on Tuesday. And so, I'm not concerned about him being able to jump right back into it, as you said, Aaron Boone already mentioned anyway. Seattle got back part of their rotation with Bryce Miller returning there. And now he is expected to piggyback with Luis Castillo next week. Now, they both made a start so far since that was alluded to. So now seems like it lines up for a Tuesday game. Question is, Kevin, who is starting and who is following, and who do you want to start and who do you want to follow?
That is a great question. The second part is the great question of that. For me, I roster Bryce Miller on some teams, and I probably roster Luis Castillo in a spot or two, but I have several Bryce Miller. So I would prefer him be the follower.
Sure.
But I don't know that we have any indication of that yet, that will be the case. And then they have an off day on Thursday, so their next time through, they may both get a turn, or one of them gets skipped, depending on what could happen there. So yeah, I need to know which way this is going to be before I can put either of them in my lineup this week, because we probably do not see either. No, with that off day Thursday, definitely they don't get another outing before the weekend. I have to know which one it's going to be.
Yeah, I'm assuming if I have gun to my head to everything, I'm assuming Castillo starts just because of the veteran status and all that, right?
Well, also, yeah, and it's a home game. Luis Castillo, this season, things have been kind of crazy, but over the past couple of seasons,
he's
been really good at home.
Sure. He's also really bad in the first month and a half of the season in his career. Like, no matter all the stints, all the places that he started, especially when he was in Cincinnati, is like something, you just chalk it up to the weather, and it's cold. He only likes pitching in the warmer climate, in the warmer months. And so it's hard not to look at those like overarching stat, or the top level stats, performance level stats, and be like, oh come on, he's gonna bring it back. Look at his ERAs in June and July. He's gonna come back, but it is looked tremendously bad
Right.
for pretty much everything except for his season debut.
And he's been dropped in over a third of 12-team leagues on
Mhm.
the NFBC format. So it's something to keep in mind going forward. If you have an extra spot, a stash spot, and you think he's going to heat up as he typically does, at least for his home starts. But yeah, I would assume he is the starter, but I will need confirmation before I put one of them in my lineup this
Mm.
week.
Chris Paddock's he got DFA'd by Miami, and he signed right away with Cincinnati, and he replaces Rhett Lauder in their rotation as Lauder hits the IL for the Reds. How is Paddock just here until Lauder comes back, or do you think just Paddock finishes out the season with the Reds? Do you care?
No,
Doesn't matter. I guess
well,
is the better question.
that's a whole nother question. Yeah, but I would guess Louder would get his spot back. We'd have to see Chris Paddock perform much better than I expect him to,
Sure.
especially in his home starts. They're in Great American Small Park. But yeah, this is probably temporary. He's probably a consideration on a week-to-week basis as a streamer, as everybody is for me, depending on matchups. But yeah, I'm not going to get too excited. Not a bad outing. 5 innings, 2 earned runs. That first outing for Cincinnati. So we'll see how things go.
Yeah, fair enough. Of course, Cincinnati still has Hunter Green working his way back. Ray
Right.
Lauder will come back at some point with he hits the IL with shoulder discomfort. So, of course, you never want to see anything arm related with your pitcher, but doesn't appear to be major, like requiring surgery or anything like that at this point. So they've got some guys working their way back up, and of course, they had Chase Petty come up, and he's back down, so he's there as well. So they've got some options, and the fact that they had Chase Petty as an option or somebody else, and they still chose to sign Chris Paddock as well, just shows you like they need innings eater. They need somebody to like take the ball every fifth day. Whether or not that's going to be good or bad performance is less of a concern, I think, and it's just making sure that the rest of their rotation isn't going to be completely strained. Another IL stint here, back with the Yankees. The Max Fried does hit the IL with left elbow soreness, but it turns out to be nothing more, quote, than a bone bruise on his elbow. Elmer Rodriguez was called up once again to replace Fried. For now, you would expect Garrett Cole to make his way back in the next week or so as well. But, are we interested in Elmer Rodriguez, at least while he's back up?
I expect to see Garrett Cole this week, actually, later in the week. If not the following week, but he's close. He's going to get Tampa Bay. I think Rodriguez this time around. Tampa Bay kind of back to being that sneaky good. We don't talk a lot about, but after a season or so where I wasn't really worried about their lineup as much, all of a sudden, Tampa's not somebody that I'm excited about running out there and facing, but at the same time, I don't think I'm going to run away from them.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen these 2 starts from Rodriguez. They've been okay, not great. Yeah, I mean, he hasn't got bombed, but 2 and 3 runs in 4 and 4 2/3 innings. I'm probably avoiding this and just waiting. I mean, there's some leagues where you may need someone like Rodriguez, and the comment I just made a few minutes ago of regarding, oh, who were we just talking about? I said I probably would be, I could probably find somebody elsewhere. Um, I'm because and what I was thinking at the time was wins and strikeouts, but we're about to come to when we're discussing categories, ratios, guys. And so that's not a comment I necessarily want to make, because if I have a starter I'm confident in his ratios, I should probably take those extra innings of those ratios
Right.
over a reliever. But the ratios for Rodriguez, I don't think will be great, is what I'm getting at. So that was a very long-winded of he's definitely consideration where I need a starter, but he's going to be clear down at the bottom of the list, and there may be a couple of relievers ahead of him.
Yeah, and like you said, if he does get that a start against Tampa Bay, it's not in Tampa Bay, right? So the
Yeah.
team you're not too afraid of, but you still got to do it in front of, in Yankee Stadium, as opposed to at the Trop, and that's a much different endeavor, as well. All right, so we've got, we're down in Florida, talking about Florida teams. Let's talk about the more southern Florida. Like I'm forcing my way into this segue, but you know what? Before I'm gonna clean that up. I'm gonna come back after this break, and we'll talk about it. All right, I've had some time to clear my mind. We're just gonna go right to Miami here. Miami, a lot of moves were made this week. One good, the other, interesting, and the third one unfortunate. They do get back their closer, Pete Fairbanks. So he goes back. Unfortunately, it's because the roster spot that opened up for Fairbanks to return was made by Bobby Snelling, who hits the IL with a UCL sprain. And to fill Bobby Snelling's spot was Braxton Garrett. He made his 2026 debut alongside Minnesota's Zebby Matthews in the same game. I'll let you spoil the ending here, but one of them went well, one of them did not. Overall, Bobby Snelling, is this an easy drop at this point? Unfortunately, especially for those who spent a lot of money bringing him on board, I got to assume that it's just sunk cost, and we just gotta move on at this point.
Unfortunately, that's the way I see it as well. Of course, further evaluation next week. I do not expect any good news,
Right.
and it would have to be extremely good for it to be even slightly good for us, because even if it's good news, he's still shut down for a while, right? Wouldn't you expect?
Absolutely. You just see UCL and you see sprain. You're like, no.
Yeah. Even if they don't find anything, they're not letting him throw a baseball for a while. So, yeah, that's the unfortunate thing. Yes, as you alluded to, Braxton Garrett, someone that a lot of us have been pretty excited about and really felt like we should have been seeing prior to this. And then he came up and supported the Miami Marlins actions and him not being in the rotation prior to now.
Right.
So I kind of give him a pass on that one outing. He's going to get another start. So I'm withholding judgment. I'm not going to on his debut 1 in the 3rd innings. I'm not going to hold him to that.
Yeah, like you said, he's going to get another start, and then probably another start after that. Just after, especially with the fact that Snelling, he's taking the place of Bobby Snelling, and Chris Paddock is already re-signed somewhere else, so they don't have a whole lot of options of who they can go out and grab on the cheap.
Unfortunately, he gets the best lineup in baseball, Atlanta, on Monday, probably. So even with the 2-step, and the second one being versus the New York Mets, who have showed some signs recently, but obviously still a lineup that we not only are not afraid of, that we probably like facing.
Don't recognize.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think I can do. I don't think I can throw them out there after that first inning and a third versus Atlanta.
Yeah, it's one of those.
Even to get that Mets lineup.
I think it's going to be one of the least expensive 2-step FAAB bids that you'll have to make if you really want it. type of situations with what we saw out of him in his debut, with the matchups that he is lined up to hit. There's a there's a non-zero chance that they, somehow find a way to push him back. He doesn't get the two-step, and then he plays in Toronto and he gets the two-step next week, which starts off in Toronto, which isn't much better even with Toronto struggles. And so we'll have to wait and see what those bids are going to be. But though that his production from last week should at least dampen the expectations on how much he may cost. Even if you are, giving him a pass.
I think something that does give me a little bit more comfort. The saying is, if you can't throw a guy out there for a two-step, what's he doing on your roster? Right?
Yep.
Atlanta for the month of May versus lefties. Yes, above average, but not that killer lineup we see overall. 104 team WRC plus versus lefties in almost 200 plate appearances. It looks like they lead the league in plate appearances versus left-handed pitching over the last 3 weeks, or at least close to it. And they are 10th. And the last team that is above average as a team versus left-handed pitching.
Jeez.
So I might be able to talk myself into this.
I think you just did.
Not necessarily recommending it. But,
Yeah.
There are some spots where I would recommend it, I think.
Yep. Just, he's going to be part of your waterfall, but he may not be at the top type of scenario. Zebby Matthews on the other end of that, he did very well for himself. He should, for where he is available, he should be one of the higher bid based on that performance alone. Do you expect Zebby to stay in the Minnesota lineup, especially with that performance? How do you send him down anytime soon?
Yeah, I think so, especially with as long as we have been waiting. And once again, many people playing our game thought he should have been playing his game long before now. So
sure.
Yeah, I think he has to pitch his way out of this spot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially with the we heard rumblings from Connor Prelip that as well as he's been doing, and he had another good start today. He's just not used to pitching every 5 days, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so anything Minnesota can do to not skip a start or stop his innings, but add a extra starter in the middle and give him an extra day's rest rather than every 5 days, or maybe even skip a start here or there because they've got the extra arm and Zebby and everybody else. It would not be total surprise either.
Yeah, and we probably get Taj Bradley back the following week. So yeah, this is gonna be, we're gonna want to pay attention and see if Minnesota gives us any news here. Because with Taj Bradley coming back most likely the week of May 25th, Memorial Day, that week, if he comes back, that gives them 6. And like you said, Prelip likes having those 5 days of rest, and he gets that this week with the off day Thursday. So yeah, this is something definitely to keep an eye on with Bradley, hopefully coming back soon.
All right, Seattle, they're going to lose Cal Raleigh for the first time in his career, at least due to an IL stint. He hits the IL with a right oblique strain. Never like to hear oblique, especially for your hitters. Who's to say how long he'll be out for? What are you seeing? What do you expect to see out of Seattle catcher and DH situation with Raleigh on the shelf?
I expect to see Mitch Garver in the lineup about what he was. Johnny Pareda got the call up here from AAA and is starting back-to-back days. It looks like they're going to kind of keep Garver on that once every 4 or 5 days, maybe a couple times a week getting in there. But the designated hitter spot, right? Cal Raleigh was in this lineup on a daily basis. So that's a little bit of a boost for Dominic Canzone, Luke Raley, these platoon guys that they kind of have several of can all fit now. Leo Rivas, Connor Joe, and Rob Refschneider all getting in there versus lefties. They haven't faced many lefties recently, but they do have 4 coming up this week. So this is a very difficult lineup to know exactly what we're going to see this coming week. And something that if we can, in my opinion, this is an opportunity that maybe there's something here that not everybody else will see. The main one is Connor Joe, I think, but is 4 starts enough? Maybe in a deep league. But definitely it's going to be more of the guys that they will play in place of you want to be careful of in Seattle this week. I just said Dominic Canzone's going to get a boost in plate appearances, but not versus those lefties.
Right.
So Luke Raley, not versus those lefties. Brendan Donovan, they don't like to play versus lefties often, but we'll see.
It's one of those situations where you see Canzone's been starting every single day, and most of those in DH over the last week and a half, but they've faced nothing but righties in that time.
Exactly.
So look for that pattern.
Yep. Be careful with your Seattle players this week. Of course, we're not going to be careful with Julio and the elite guys, but sure. Be careful with some of the lower half of that lineup.
We saw Julio get into the DH spot the other day, and it's nice to be able to have that ability to give a guy like Julio a day off in the field because you have a little bit more flexibility in that DH spot. So if there is a silver lining for seeing Cal Raleigh get
the silver lining,
there it is.
This is a blessing in disguise for fantasy managers. That's it. We should have benched Raleigh a long time ago. How many of us actually did? I didn't.
You can't
I only have him in 1 or 2 spots, and I didn't bench him knowing I should have. This 0 for 38 we saw recently wasn't the first time he was 0 for about 40 this season. He should have been on our benches. This is a blessing in disguise.
There it is. So that leads you. I mean, the report is that he'll be shut down for about a week and a half before even being reevaluated for his injury. How long? How many setbacks do you actually have to see to actually consider dropping Raleigh? Not only based on his performance that we've just been kind of living through, but also just due to being a catcher / DH on your bench, taking up a roster spot, especially in a no IL type of league.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah. I've had Alejandro Kirk in that spot in a couple of leagues for a while. It's probably been too long, but now I'm at the point where he's rehabbing and he'll be back soon. But I probably held on too long. Kirk is not Cal Raleigh. He hasn't hit 60 home runs, but Cal Raleigh is not 2025 Cal Raleigh either. So not long. A couple of setbacks. He's a drop, unfortunately. Unless you have the spot, right? If you're fortunate enough to have a team where you don't need all 7 of your spots for guys coming back in a week or 2 and for coverage for the weekend, then sure, you can hold him as long as you need to. But unfortunately, it hurts. I'm just happy I don't have as many Cal Raleigh shares as I wished I did at the time.
Right. Well, I mean, unless you were grabbing him at the end of the first round, it was hard to get yourself get him on your rosters. All right, this should be a quick one. So Chase DeLander, unfortunately, he hits the IL after he left his Thursday start, reporting some right arm tightness, and he has since been put on the IL with a right elbow strain. He has been the one shining light that you can point to when considering a Colorado starting or Colorado pitcher in general. Does his absence give you any thought into the rest of that rotation or the replacement?
Not until the weekend when they're on the road. Both Sugano, well, actually, a handful of guys that they have going next weekend. I'm actually interested in. Arizona has put up some runs, some games, not the best ballpark to go pitch in, but Sugano's been pretty darn good in some road starts this season. Jose Quintana has been as well. And then Michael Lorenzen. So I may have interest in some of these Colorado pitchers over the weekend, but at not probably not the home games. I may suck up Jose Quintana two-step getting the Texas Rangers, who have not been blowing the doors off anybody. So yeah, I'm actually kind of interested in some of these Colorado pitchers this week.
They did not make a starter for starter swap to replace him in the rotation, so they're still without a fifth starter, and they have a lot of games coming up. So I'm curious to see how they handle that, whether it be bullpen games or if there's somebody else that they can either sign on a minor league deal or call up. They have a couple of guys in AAA that are on the 40-man roster, so they could, make that kind of a move between Carson Palmquist, Gabriel Hughes. So there's a couple of options there. I just don't know how, interesting I'll be, especially if it's somebody like Palmquist, who ranks highly on their prospect list, but would be making a 2026 or MLB debut. In probably if it lines up for early in the week at home in Colorado against Texas. So
yeah, and they have Tanner Gordon, who has made 6 appearances, all of them at least 3 innings, and half of them 4 innings. So he's pretty much stretched out. He could get a start or be a follower as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, just a PSA, if you will. If you were hoping to get Jordan Westberg back anywhere, you can stop waiting and you can safely drop him. For those who are still holding out hope, he's set to have elbow surgery and won't play again until 2027. So that's just me being kind, letting you know in case you missed that. Couple of debuts that we're expecting to see on Sunday, and by debuts I just mean 2026 in new team debuts. Grayson Rodriguez is set to debut for the Angels, while Lucas Giolito is set to debut in Southern California for the Padres, both on Sunday. So if these guys were not drafted and dropped, they're not available. They won't be available to you until next week's FAAB, but strong possibility they were drafted and dropped in a few of the deeper leagues, were those who thought Giolito would sign a little bit earlier than he did, and then Grayson Rodriguez, just dealing with Grayson Rodriguez things. Which one would you be hoping is available in your leagues, Kevin? If either. And you can answer.
That's a great question. And the if either, right?
You're gonna go look for your bids. You're gonna look at the free agency. Who's the first one you're gonna hit Control F and try to find?
Oh, they're both clear at the bottom of my waterfalls, but Grayson Rodriguez, I think, is slightly ahead. I know Lucas Giolito was probably holding out for more money, but somebody to giving it to him if he was good enough, I kind of feel.
Sure.
Also home for Grayson Rodriguez versus the Texas lineup, as opposed for it does appear that that Lucas Giolito will get the Athletics. Now he gets them in San Diego, so it's not in West Sacramento, which is a plus, or I wouldn't even consider Giolito. But I think it's still enough for me to put Grayson Rodriguez a little ahead.
Yeah, neither situation seems like it's a favorable one.
Neither one's great, but neither one's terrifying either. It's yeah, they're both worthy of being in my waterfalls, I feel like, but not very high.
Fair. Yeah, we'll be able to see how they both debut before having to consider what those bids might be as well. So keep an eye on those box scores on Sunday afternoon. Um, Detroit got back Casey Mize into their rotation. It seems like he just like fits right back in. Should get another continue to get starts in that rotation. Are you itching to get him back into your active rotation?
Itching may not be the right word,
Right.
but I'm perfectly okay with getting him out there versus Cleveland next week.
Mhm. Doesn't really seem to have displaced anybody per se. Detroit had been dealing with their own set of injuries as well. But yeah, is there anybody kind of missing out on innings because Mize has returned?
It would. Well, this is all with the Verlander keep being delayed, right?
Mhm.
We thought we were going to see Montero lose time when Verlander came back. That didn't happen. Then since then, we've seen Ty Madden get into the rotation. Performance wise, the worst of anybody is Flaherty. It should be the one worried about his spot, but he's got a probably enough of a contract that he's safe for now. But
Sure.
no, there's not any innings going missing that I'm worried about.
Right. All right. And last but not least, we're going to my Red Sox, who are going to be without their starting shortstop in Trevor Story. He hits the IL with a groin issue, which apparently he has been dealing with pretty much all season. Now he's officially on the IL to get that right. And notably, Nick Sogard was the one that was called up to take his place on the roster, and not Christian Campbell. In the question, and I sorry to not give the credit properly, but it somewhere in the Discord, in the pitcher list Discord, somebody just pointed out, it's like, why do the Red Sox hate Christian Campbell so much? But I mean, Trevor
That was
Story
going to
was,
be my question for you.
yeah. Well, I didn't have an answer for it
Yeah.
I mean, he hasn't been like lighting the ball on fire in Worcester per se, but still, it's like you went through all that trouble of calling him up. Now, who's to say that there's different influences now with the Red Sox, now that all the coaching changes have been made, and what have you. But it does seem like the clock's already started on Campbell at this point. It's like you might as well see what you got when there's an opportunity to call him up and let him just like run it out. But yeah, I mean, Nick Sogard should just be fine if he can, he can be a stopgap, what have you. But it does. I'm not. I guess I'm worried Story is going to be out for some extended period of time, especially if he's been dealing with his injury. Now they're finally willing to kind of throw him on the IL. I don't know how long I expect to see him out of that lineup.
And also asking you as the Red Sox fan, is this like it appeared as if Andrew Monasterio had lost all of his playing time except versus lefties.
Sure.
Well, now he's started these two games at shortstop versus two righties. The only two righties that they have faced since Story went down, the only two pitchers they faced since Story went down. Is this an indication that Monasterio's defense is good enough that with Story out, he is their shortstop?
I mean, I think for the foreseeable future, that's probably accurate. Now
So
whether or
his
not,
playing time just got a big boost.
right, right,
Okay.
and you've got to assume that they're going to preserve that defensive difference that he makes in that position. And as we talk about all the time, it's like if you can have somebody at the shortstop position every day and not platoon it, you try to take advantage of that, right?
Right. That's
And
what I'm getting at. I would expect that if they want someone else to be their shortstop, that move is made this weekend.
Mhm.
And we kind of know going into the week whether it's him or somebody else, whoever the somebody else might be.
There isn't a someone else though. I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
like Rafaela has some experience there, but he's been playing every day in center field. That you need him in center field there. I mean, Sogard has played all over the diamond, but he's not an everyday guy. Like he's an all over the diamond kind of guy, and probably better in the second base spot. Durbin obviously is your everyday third baseman. He's not going anywhere. If he's going to move anywhere, he's going to move to second base. The Red Sox have been a team over the last 3 or 4 years that have just had too many second base options across the board, and they just end up moving all their second basemen elsewhere. I mean, again, Weiler Abreu has had some history there as well, but again, you're not taking him out of that everyday right field spot. So there isn't another option unless you find somebody else. Campbell, also not a shortstop either anymore. So kind of Falafel has had some shortstop experience. He hasn't played shortstop this year, but for the Red Sox, but I don't know. I guess he's really the backup shortstop now in some way.
Yeah, and Monasterio got a spot start here and there when Story was healthy, but they were few and far between unless Story was the one getting the day off. He's the shortstop.
Yeah.
The more I look at this, this is a big boost. If you like what he can do in full-time plate appearances, he is definitely worth a bid. Bottom third of the order, but not all the way at the bottom these first couple of games back in the 7 and 8 spot. Versus lefties, we have seen him much higher in the order at times throughout the season, as high as second.
Yeah, I mean, and when you say like if you like what he can do, let's just be honest, he can't do much, at least not offensively. So just having a warm body and a beating heart in your lineup every day, sure, that's what he does for you. Probably doesn't hurt you too much it doesn't hurt you in your batting average, but I'm expecting it to be pretty empty batting average. Which as a Red Sox fan, I'm perfectly fine with. Just get me some empty batting average and I'm okay. All right. Well, Kevin, we got to get to actual recommendations here as we get through all the news. Of course, there's a whole bunch of news that we missed that doesn't really impact FAAB considerations too much, or I had to cut some stuff out, right? You should be already listening to the First Pitch podcast every single morning to get all the news and information on a regular basis. We're just here kind of summarizing it before the FAAB period hits. And then, of course, Nick Pollock has his Plus Pitch podcast every weekday afternoon or mornings, depending on how quickly he gets to that. So you can hear all about his observations from every single start, from every starter the day before, and then previewing his streaming options for that day and the day after on the Plus Pitch podcast. So listen to both of those on a daily basis. Right before I take a break, I'll remind you we will be coming back in a second to go over our recommendations category by category as we typically do. Like I said, first we're going to take a quick break. All right, Kevin, we got to get right into it because we talked a lot, over an hour worth of news. So let's get into some actual recommendations. Starting in the power categories, we've got home runs, we got RBIs that we need to cover as we head into the 9th FAAB period of 2026. Who you eyeballing?
Yeah, I'm kind of intrigued. Well, not kind of. I am very intrigued by Houston's lineup right now, because they're going to face right-handed starting pitching 5 of 6 games this upcoming week, and their lineup, if you haven't taken a look at the Houston Astros lineup in a while, you absolutely would not recognize it, for certain. We have Braden Shoemake is playing every single day. He's been on the roster for most of the season since coming over from the Yankees in mid-April, and he was getting his spot starts now over the past 6 games versus right-handed starting pitching. Or actually, they faced a couple lefties. You can go out the last 9 times they have faced a right-handed starter. Braden Shoemake has been in the starting lineup. He has already got 3 home runs in that little bit of time. He was mid-teens to close to 20 in the minors a couple of times. But it's also Cam Smith and Zach DeZenzo are kind of splitting time versus righties, back and forth. Neither one of them playing quite every day, but both of them playing most days. They've been giving other guys a day off here and there and getting these guys in. Altuve can get a day off, or Jordan Alvarez could get a day off, and one of these two guys has been in there. So these guys, yes, it's the bottom third basically of Houston's lineup, although Brandon Shoemake has been in there in the 5 or 6 hole for them over the past week. But this Houston lineup intrigues me. These guys versus the righties. Shoemake, everyday shortstop, as we were just talking about. Only he's been putting up a little bit of numbers here for Houston in a limited number of plate appearances, and he's about to get a lot more of them.
I mean, excellent insights there. I want to get an understanding here, because I'm looking at PL Bot's recommendations in the power category specifically. Again, I'm only looking at guys that are available at least in 50% or more of main event leagues. And they've got a pair of Detroit hitters. And I'm trying to figure out exactly what it is that PL Bot is seeing out of the upcoming. And it helps that that Detroit has 7 games. Sure.
Mhm.
They are hitting against Cleveland and Baltimore. They're going to get a even mix of righties and lefties throughout the course of the week. But PL Bot really likes Wensil Perez and Matt Vierling, who are both pretty much playing every day. They get a day off here or there, but it doesn't seem to be like a platoon situation specifically. So they should each probably play 6 out of the 7 games throughout the course of the week. And what game they get off is, your guess is as good as mine at this point. But they are easily the 2 best overall power options that PL Bot is throwing out there, with expectation of a 80% chance of hitting a home run each of them, and projected 3.4, 3.3 RBI on the week. The other name that sticks out to me is Christopher Morel. I just don't know if Chris Morel actually gets enough playing time to make it worthwhile for me. Even with the 7 games, he's just not playing every day for Miami. But yeah, any insight or thoughts on Vierling or Perez in Detroit in general?
Well, Vierling, for certain. I understand why, and that's because he is playing all but every day. And versus lefties, he's going to be at the top or the cleanup hitter. He hits like first or second or fourth or fifth versus lefties, depending on how AJ Hinch is playing that day or feeling that day. Either one is great for us. So I get that with Vierling. He's playing nearly every day, definitely being up at the top of the lineup. He's even hitting in the middle of the lineup 5th versus righties the last 2 times he's been in the lineup versus righties. That's great. And Wensil Perez, he's going to be more towards the bottom of the lineup, but he's played, 5 of the last 6 days. And he goes on streaks like this throughout the season where he plays 5 out of 6, 4 out of 5, and then he'll play every other day for a while. But with this 7-game week, with the 3 lefties that we expect them to face, I can see the boost based on plate appearances for Perez as well. Although he'll be in the bottom third of the order, I prefer Vierling.
It's funny to just look at this lineup history of the 2, and it's whenever Vierling gets a day off is the day that Perez moves to center field. And then when Perez gets the day off, it's usually McKinstry, now that he's back from the IL, filling in his spot as well in the lineup. All right, so at least names to consider, especially
a couple of guys, right? And this, I wasn't going to mention these guys, but because of your question, when you're looking at different projection systems, and especially when it breaks them down weekly, one pitching change can change things drastically. A couple of them can really, really mess things up. So double check the handedness of the projected starters for the teams that lineups will be facing, because if they haven't been updated in that projection system, I'm seeing there's a system that is telling me that let me double check. I don't want to say it wrong, and I'm not going to name it because I'm about to rag on them. But they're telling me that I want David Fry and Rhys Hoskins for power this week. Cleveland's set to face two lefties. David Fry and Rhys Hoskins will get 2 starts and a couple of pinch hits this week. So double check that kind of stuff before you're just automatically just basing every decision you make on weekly projections.
Man, playing time is the hardest thing for a projection to get right. Just it all depends on what your sources are, because most of the projections are pulling in a source for playing time from somewhere, a third party source, right?
Exactly.
They're not putting a finger, a thumb on the scale for that, and they just have to rely on some other third party. So yeah, obviously something that you can put the thumb on the scale yourself if you know something that for whatever reason the projection is not taking into consideration.
Yeah, this past week was great for Fry and Hoskins, and they produced as well. But, and that's probably what the projection's going off of. They were getting playing time this week. We're going to give it to them next week. They were awesome, but they're not going to be in that lineup.
Mm-hmm. All right, we need some speed as well, Kevin. Stolen bases, runs scored, low-hanging fruit here. I'll just get it out of the way. Ha-Seong Kim obviously returned for Atlanta. Not hitting toward the top of the lineup, but still a speed threat as long as he doesn't get hurt again. And could still continue to score runs even at the bottom of the order, and is playing every day at shortstop. So Atlanta also has 7 games for next week as well. So that's the first name that popped out for me. But who else do you have?
Yep. I'm continuing to backtrack my couple of seasons worth of ragging on Ezekiel Durand for getting playing time and not doing anything with it. Still performing well in Texas. So I like him. Daryl Hernandez, who we talked about, the everyday shortstop for the Athletics. I like him. A couple of guys that we bring up a lot and still have availability. David Hamilton, he's getting enough playing time. This not the best week for him. I think they face 2 lefties. Milwaukee does this week, but he's still stealing bases. If you can handle a 200 batting average for half a week in your lineup, he's available in your league. Nasim Nunez is up to 20 stolen bases already on the season. So a lot of the usual suspects, and one that I really like because he's performing better overall than we have seen him in the past. I do not think we're going to see him get out of the bottom of the lineup, but Brian Rocchio in Cleveland is kind of all around putting up decent numbers that actually help us a little bit, not just don't hurt us. And he's solidified his playing time as everyday 9-hitter in that lineup.
Nice. Don't look now, but it would appear the Angels might have a new leadoff hitter, and his name is Vaughn Grissom. He has led off for the Angels the last 3 days straight. He's played 3 different positions, or he started at 3 different positions in those 3 games. First base, second base, and third base in that order. Obviously, he's been playing most of his playing time throughout the season, as sporadic as it's been. He's been at second base, but I mean, now he's got what looks to be about 3 or 4 games at third base, 3 or 4 games at first base. There's a non-zero chance that by the end of the month he adds another position eligibility in those leagues where you need 10 starts or 10 appearances. But he started in each of the last 8 games, and he's led off in the last 3. 2 against lefties, one against righties, and the Angels are another team that have 7 games next week as well. So Not ruling Von Grissom out at this point. 42% rostered in main event, only 1% in 12 teamers. I'm not ready to say you need to grab him in your 12 teamers quite yet, but if he continues to have this kind of opportunity with the Angels, I mean, he's going to, regardless, he's going to score some runs.
Yeah, they have a 7-game week, 2 of them versus lefties. We'll see him in that leadoff spot. It was an opener, that third game versus a righty. I checked on that earlier because I saw that as well. So I did double check, and it was indeed an opener. But you go back just a couple of games prior to that, and versus righties, he was hitting third in the lineup, right behind Neto and Trout. So regardless, he does seem to have played his way into a really nice lineup boost, and therefore a lot more plate appearances here.
There you go. All right. Well, speaking of all these 7-game work weeks, let's head into the opportunity section here, Kevin. The whole list of 7-game teams include the New York Yankees, Toronto, Cleveland, Detroit, the Athletics, the Angels, Atlanta, Miami, the Mets, Washington, Arizona, and Colorado. I want to question this. I want to double check the notes here, which say that nobody has a 5-game. For some reason, PLBot seems to think somebody has a 5-game. Yeah, this is definitely wrong. All right, nobody has a 5-game work week here. This is what I'm saying. This is sometimes you have to question where you're getting your games
double
played.
check things.
Throwing me off my game here. Oh, you know what it is? It's the projection is not so much how many games their team has, it's how many games the projection thinks that they're going into. So
nice.
Wait a minute. Cincinnati definitely has more than 4 games
there you go.
next week. No, it's like, no, they just think Will Benson won't get into more than 4 games. But
you just stole my guy.
Oh, geez.
No, I think it's awesome. It's awesome because all of a sudden he's the leadoff hitter versus righties.
There you go. I mean, this is exactly what we were talking about a couple of weeks ago with like a guy like Lockridge, where even if you don't think he's going to get in all week, if you can switch out your lineup halfway through the week, you just use Benson for half the week and then
they do face 2 lefties this week, and he'll sit probably versus them. That's the bad thing. We really want a righty heavy week to take advantage of this. But Will Benson is who I was looking at there for that reason.
Well, there we go. I mean,
and we talked about Shoemaker earlier. Everyday shortstops, they get playing time.
Exactly. Well, Cincinnati will be splitting up their whole week 3 at Philadelphia, but they will return home over the weekend to host 3 against St. Louis. Colorado will also be splitting their time. First starting off in Denver against the Rangers for 3, and then going to Arizona for 4. So they might have 7 games, but half of them are on the road. And the Athletics will be out of West Sacramento for the entirety of the week, going to the Angels for 3 and San Diego for 4. Well, besides Benson, then anybody else looking like they have a good opportunity ahead of themselves for this coming week, Kevin?
Yeah, it actually kind of surprises me a little bit that this player is as available as he is. Has been playing versus every righty and about half of lefties all season long, hitting in the middle third of the lineup for Cleveland. Now on Saturday, this is only the second time all season that he is hitting leadoff versus a righty. However, I'm not so sure this doesn't stick, and that's why he is my pick, and he's still available in 2/3 of 12-team leagues. Stephen Kwan is not having a good year, and this is the first time this season they've dropped him out of that leadoff spot, and he hit 6th on Saturday. I don't think this is a 1-game thing. Now, I don't know that Schneeman's going to be at the top of the lineup every game or even against every righty, but he's a good candidate for that spot. And I do think Kwan is going to be lowered in the lineup for a bit here till we see him get things going. So I love Daniel Schneeman. Some of the other candidates to hit leadoff in Cleveland would already be rostered to be guys like DeLauder and Ramirez, right? Even Travis Bazana, we could see up there at the top of the lineup, as crazy as that sounds for someone that just got called up for his MLB debut. I would be ecstatic if it's Brian Rocchio. It's not out of the question, but I highly doubt it.
Sure.
That would make my recommendation on Rocchio earlier skyrocket to the top of my list.
Yeah, if you just knew that you were going to get that kind of playing time out of him, sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we got to get into pitching, Kevin, finally. But we will do that after this break. All right, Kevin. Wins and strikeouts. We need 2 starters. We need vulture wins. We need whatever we can get here to chase those wins through the month of May. So we're doing it a little bit less in August. Who's out there that you feel comfortable that's going to be higher on the waterfall bid than the aforementioned Lucas Giolito and Grayson Rodriguez, who we've already established will probably be at the bottom.
Right. Patrick Corbin, 2-start week. I'm taking him. Yes, being a lefty, I'm not as worried about that at Yankees start. Being a lefty, I love that start at home versus Pittsburgh. So love that 2-start there. I think Anthony K, where available, getting his start in Seattle might be an advantage to Seattle that Kyle Raleigh is not in that lineup. As horrible as that sounds and as unfortunate as it is, their lineup may be improved without him, but I think we would say a lineup without Cal Raleigh is an easier. You still have to pitch Cal Raleigh carefully, so an easier lineup to work your way through. I do like my Cleveland guys that may be available, although that availability has dropped considerably for most of them, other than Slade Ciccone, and that's been due to performance. So I don't think I want that second start of the week at Philadelphia out of him. We talked a little bit about Casey Mize. I do like that Cleveland start this week. Bring that up again. Zebby Matthews, where available. We talked about him and Braxton Garrett as well, where they're available this week. Love that. I can't believe I'm saying this. And let me just double check something that I haven't missed something, because this is a guy I would not have. For all the recommendations I do make pitchers in certain matchups, this is one that has never been a guy I've been really fond of. Of course, he has come up in certain matchups throughout the year, but I can't argue with the results he's putting up so far this season. In fact, it's a sub-3 ERA. Is that really possible for Aaron Savale? But the Athletics are on the road, so he's away from home. So I'm interested where he's available. Absolutely. That one shocked me. I was surprised when I put Aaron Savale down on the list there. We talked about MI last week. Where available, I think he's worth stashing. I don't know if I'm starting him yet, but if he's still available out there, I think I want him on my roster to see if he figures this out compared to what you had to pay for him in draft costs, what you can get him for now. And this is mental. There may be something he could figure out here. So I'm still in on that. We did talk about Grayson Rodriguez. Would see him back where available, like that one as well. Not much else. Zach Thornton isn't going to be available to us. I'd like to see that start at Washington. If we're going to see him the following week, he probably gets a 2-step because we probably see him next Monday. So taking a close eye on that. And pretty much everybody else that I would have much interest in is rostered, unfortunately. And some of these guys are guys that weren't rostered, 3 or 4 weeks ago, and guys I have liked, and I am disappointed in myself that I didn't get before they became unavailable. Kyle Harrison, some guys like that. But
The
Yeah, a lot more options than we've had over the past few weeks. I'm much more comfortable just setting a long waterfall and not trying to spend very much money on any of these guys.
Yeah, the name that popped out to me that I was disappointed in was Jacob Lopez. I'm like, oh, cool, Jacob Lopez. I know he hasn't been doing that great, but he's not going to be. The Athletics are on the road all week. That's great. Matchup against the Angels. Matchup against the Padres. But it's not as though Jacob Lopez is only doing bad at home. He's just not performing anywhere throughout the course of the season. It's still a two-step. You still have to at least take note, and he should get both of those starts with a 7-game work week for the Athletics, but probably
I
not.
thought you were gonna when you used the word disappointed, I thought you were gonna bring up Griffin Canning. I'm so sad that I can't recommend
Oh,
him. I have loved him for years, but he has not been good, and he gets the Dodgers.
yeah, yep, not an option.
Nope.
All right. Well, we got to hit up our ratios if we're going to consider Jacob Lopez to get us a win or some strikeouts. We're going to have to also balance that out with some ratios. Kevin, who's out there that can, get our ERA and whip in order?
So many guys in this category. Brought up Brooks Raley last week. He still has microscopic ERA and WHIP. Justin Slayton looking pretty good in Boston. He has nice projections for the week for ERA and WHIP. Eric Miller, if we want to continue with that, leaning towards the guys that might get a ninth inning opportunity from time to time. And one guy that a couple of weeks ago I would not believe I would be recommending, but he's looking much better recently as opposed to the rest of Kansas City's bullpen. And that's John Schreiber's looking like old John Schreiber recently and might even get a ninth inning opportunity here or there.
Interesting. I wonder, this is the wrong category per se, but Ryan Yarbrough is out there for the
Mhm.
Yankees, and with their roster changes and waiting for Derek Cole to come back free going on the IL. Obviously, we talked about Elmer Rodriguez being called up. You still have Paul Blackburn and Ryan Yarbrough in the long relief type of role for the Yankees, and he's been perfectly fine so far in that role for the Yankees throughout the course of the shortened course of the season. But I wonder if they do go with either a bullpen game or they use him as a follower, like he once was. Oh, like so incredibly valuable chasing those wins in that situation. If he could be somebody worth, just putting in the waterfall bids and not being terribly disappointed that you end up with him for like a dollar bid or what have you as well.
I agree with that 100%. And I've done that. And I've had him in my starting lineup a time or two. And I got pretty fortunate. The problem is at times it appears the Yankees save Yarborough just in case they need him in a situation like that. And
Mhm.
he'll go a week at a time. He'll go a week between appearances.
Yep.
That's the problem. But when he does get an appearance, like his last one, he got out there for 3 innings. We get that and we're good. We get the 4 strikeouts, a 3 ERA and a 1 WHIP for those 3 innings. That's great. We need those 3 innings.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
When you save them for that situation, you only give them, an inning and a third, or like maybe even just 2 innings. It's not going as deep. It's not going as far. Not making the impact you need. All right. Well, you usually say the ratios are, you're targeting a guy in the ratios to get you maybe a vulture save, or it's going to be at the back end of the rotation. But let's move right into saves, Kevin. What kind of situations are you seeing that you're willing to take we didn't mention it. I mean, I'll throw it out here now. Matt Brash is looking like he's going to come back sooner rather than later for Seattle. Could be a situation that you grab him now if we do think Munoz is going through something. But any other bullpens that you're watching with bated breath?
For some reason, Adam, typically this is the type of situation where I finally say I don't care. But there's I need saves in some leagues, so I'm really looking. And this Cincinnati situation is one of those where there are several guys that could get opportunities. I think at this point it would be Tony Santillan if we had not seen that absolute blow up. As we were recording last week, I think it was as we were recording, when he gave up like 4 earned runs and got 1 out or something like that. But he's still in the mix. TJ Antone, there's a name from a few years back, Adam, that we were pretty big on, many of us, and now we're seeing him out there, and he got the most recent save on Friday evening with 3 other guys listed as closers on roster resources, all getting holds. And Graham Ashcraft, actually, all 5 guys listed as closers pitched for Cincinnati on Friday on roster resource. Graham Ashcraft, Tony Santillan, Pierce Johnson. We've talked about getting 9th inning opportunities in the pack. Brock Burke, we were hoping would get that opportunity for Texas a couple seasons ago. And TJ Antone, all these guys. $2 on each of them. Take the one you get, put them in your lineup, get nice ratios, and hopefully maybe you land on the one that takes over this job.
One, I'm just, again, not something we put in the news, but Josh Hader does look like he's a little bit closer to returning for the Astros.
I think they might have even alluded to, without flat out saying, early June, which is coming really quickly.
Yeah, coming right up. And Brian Abreu and Brian King, the Bryans, have been kind of swapping that, going back and forth. So get what you can out of the Bryans now, as Josh Hader comes back, and I would presume just goes right back into that role. Yeah.
And as always, I'm going to defer to Rick and Jake over with our reliever crew over there. That's where I'm getting my information.
Sure. Yeah, make sure you listen to those guys on In the Pen on a weekly basis for podcast form, and of course Rick's daily RP roundup over at pitcherlist.com as well. All right, Kevin, leaving the best for last, of course, the wild card section. Before we do that, we'll take one last break. All right, Kevin, I've been just like, I don't think my league mates listen to this, to our podcast anymore, so it's fine. But like, I've just been watching with bated breath, Kevin Alcantara, after you talked about him last week. And I'm like, I know he's going to get called up now that Kevin talked about him. He has not gotten called up, but he continues to do good things in the minors. So I am waiting. But give me another great name that I can start paying attention to, rather than just keep watching Alcantara the whole time.
Yeah. I think I said this last week or the week before, in addition to Alcantara at the time, all these pitchers coming back from injury, where they're available, there's some of them it's getting time. You just brought up Josh Hader. Perfect example. If he was dropped in your league, it's time. And this probably the last week that guys like that will be available anywhere. Garrett Cole, another one that is coming back. It's imminent, where we're going to see him very soon. So that's kind of where I am there. I think I may have talked about this guy in the offseason, Adam, because this is somebody I've been a fan of for a couple of years now. I do roster him in at least 2 of my dynasty leagues, so I am a little biased. I'm sure I brought him up, but it was probably when we didn't know how well Jordan Walker was going to be playing this year. Joshua Baez, this is a follow-up, because I know I talked about him, but I think it was in the offseason. He's up to 10 home runs on the season already. He's kind of pushing the issue. St. Louis isn't the rebuilding team we thought they were going to be, at least this point in the season. It's intriguing to see. I don't think there is necessarily an easy spot for him at the moment with Jordan Walker, Nathan Church performing. And so I don't know if we would see Baez in center field or if we'd try to get Church over to center. But other than playing, I have been a big Victor Scott fan. I've talked well about him even when he's been performing just as he is now, but a 241 on base percentage, much more than the 179 batting average, just isn't going to cut it at the major league level. They can't keep sending him out there. So Joshua Baez may be on the way.
There you go. There we go. Good name to follow. We got some quote breaking news while we've been recording, so let's throw those in here and get your off the cuff observations. Jose Altuve, he's going to get some imaging done after injuring his left side on an awkward swing on Saturday. If Altuve were to miss time for the Astros, anybody come to mind as far as like who they could fill in, for Altuve in that lineup? I'm putting you on
It'll be Bryce Matthews. I think they moved Bryce Matthews to second base, and then we see all three of DeCenzo, Cam Smith, and Zach Cole on a daily basis. I think it shores up. I think the outfielders get the benefit. Matthews moves to second, and those three outfielders that were splitting two spots now have a spot of their own. That clears up the whole thing that I brought up earlier in the it clears it up for us.
Great observation there with Bryce Matthews. I mean, Bryce Matthews playing pretty much every single day already, but that's
he is. But they'll just move him, and the other outfielders will be playing every day as well, I think. Now, Shea Whitcomb has been on the roster all season, other than 2 days he was sent down, called right back up, but he hasn't been in a game since mid-April. I have no idea what they're doing with Shea Whitcomb. Who knows? That could throw a big wrinkle into all this.
Now, do you think Matthews in the twice since he's gone everyday playing time, or actually not twice, the last 3 times that Altuve has sat, Matthews has been the leadoff hitter. Every other day he's 6 or 7. Does Matthews just become the leadoff hitter in general on an everyday basis if Altuve is just out of the lineup? That's what I'm seeing.
I think so. I don't think you're going to lead off Paredes, and he's been the 2. I think you want Alvarez to have more RBI opportunity, and I don't. They're a team that hits their catcher 9th. Cam Smith. I think Bryce Matthews is the leadoff hitter for the Houston Astros.
Yeah, you got to take notice of that, even if he's not, putting up great numbers in general over the last 10 days or so. But, leadoff hitter on.
And this is a guy that's already playing every day, just getting a huge lineup boost. And the only reason he's probably not already rostered much more heavily is that lineup position. This is a big one, Adam. Good catch.
All right, and then the last one in San Francisco, or Sacramento, I guess. Helio Ramos, he's going to miss at least 2 weeks, likely more, with a quad sprain, thanks to Alex Pavlovic of NBC Sports reporting on that. KJ Smith will be part of the left field mix while Ramos is out, at least from that report. Any other, indications coming out of San Francisco with Ramos missing time?
Yeah, we might see Drew Gilbert. He hasn't been a full-time guy, at least versus righties. Drew Gilbert will sit versus lefties, but that's who got the start in left field on Saturday. We'll probably see Harrison Bader is back and healthy right now. So that's kind of the good thing for San Francisco. This happened right after they got Harrison Bader back for their outfield. So they were up a guy, but yeah, obviously now, and with Bader's history, they're going to be very hopeful that he remains healthy here for the near term until they get Ramos back, I'm sure.
Interesting that Schmidt was the name brought up since he hasn't played the outfield all season
Yeah.
for the Giants.
And he's been sitting versus righties recently, and he hadn't been.
Right. Yeah.
Not all the time, but like 3 times in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah,
He's
more
sat
so
versus
than a
righty.
random day off, right? Like
Right.
almost every other day.
Just a little more. Yeah.
Yeah. I do wonder. I mean, Smith's been DHing a handful of times. I wonder if this gives Bryce Eldridge more runway to play, not every day, but more than he has been. He's been missing pretty much every other day on average since he got called up, but only DHing. So maybe there's more opportunity in the DH spot if Schmidt is rotating in the outfield as well. So more interesting things happening, of course, right at the end of our recording. But we got to throw it in there, right? Especially if things are changing for your family.
And I love that the Astros news. Not
Well,
that I love it
I don't think that came out.
That sounded out horribly. But I love the point you brought up with the Astros. That makes Bryce Matthews a major target of mine in leagues where he's available for this week. And this is late enough news. Not everybody may notice this. Hopefully everybody listening gets word and gets him in at least into their waterfalls, if not at the top. But I think that's a good late one that we might be able to sneak through in some places.
Mm-hmm. And there's no word on how much time, if any, Altuve will miss. But I mean, if you're sending a guy for
this is a safe, because you can use Bryce Matthews anyway. Plays every day.
He's already playing every day, mostly.
Exactly.
All right. So with all that in mind and anything else, Kevin, closes out with any other pieces of advice to the thing. I'm gonna cut you off. Next week is Memorial Day weekend. There's always going to be the consideration for holidays and paying attention and what have you. But this weekend, we got nothing. So what do you
got? This weekend, the other thing I say all the time, all the little things add up to a big thing. And we've talked about a lot of them during this. And this is all stuff that every single person that listens to this show knows all of it. But just remind yourself of things like that, what we talked about, double checking the handedness of pitchers teams are going to face in the upcoming week before just automatically accepting plate appearances that they're going to get. Double check things like that. Double check what's going to happen to position in a lineup with some of these injuries, like you just brought up with the possibility of Altuve getting taken out of a game if he's going to miss time. What's that do? It's just, there is so much that another thing I bring up all the time. That notebook that I always bring up, and I always give Jenny Butler credit. Have a page at the very front or to the very back with a checklist. Okay, every Sunday before FAAB runs, I do this. Every Monday before lineups set, I do this. Every Friday before lineup set, I do this. Preparing for my FAAB throughout the week, I need to check on all of these things before I do any of this on Sunday. It all adds up to being a huge deal, even though it's a whole bunch of little tiny things.
Mm-hmm. There you go. It all adds up. Well, with all that and everything else, that's going to do it for episode 254 of On the Wire. I am Adam Howe, and on behalf of Kevin Hastings, thanks for listening. And we bid you goodbye.